Captain Elias Ward had faced many strange things in his life, but nothing prepared him for the moment he stepped into the throne hall of the Jirani Empire. The hall was vast, with walls that shimmered like liquid silver under pale blue lights. Alien symbols moved and shifted on the floor, glowing faintly as if alive. The air was heavy with the scent of something metallic, sharp and unknown. And at the far end, on a throne carved from what looked like a single piece of black crystal, sat the ruler of 1,000 worlds, the alien queen herself. Elias expected a challenge. Maybe questions about war, maybe a trap. He had been briefed on Jirani hostility, their history of crushing human explorers who dared to enter their space. But what came out of the queen's mouth stopped him in his tracks. Human, can you show me how your kind lives? Her voice was soft, almost trembling. It did not echo with the usual power of a monarch. It was curious, fragile, and almost painfully honest. Elias blinked. He stared at the queen, the great warrior, the conqueror whose fleets had spanned galaxies, who had crushed entire worlds without mercy, was asking him to teach her about life. Not war, not strategy, but life. The queen's eyes were large and luminous, glowing faintly blue, and they held something that startled him. It was not anger, not suspicion. It was loneliness, a deep aching emptiness, a curiosity that came from a being who had seen the universe in ways humans could not imagine, and yet had never truly lived. He swallowed hard and bowed, trying to steady himself. Your Majesty, you want me to show you life? His voice sounded small in the massive hall. Yes, she whispered. Her hands rested on the arms of the throne, delicate yet commanding. Not power, not conquest. Life. How do your people wake? How do they laugh, eat, sleep, and love? Can you show me that? Elias felt a strange warmth in his chest, a mixture of fear and awe. He had faced alien weapons, void storms, and cosmic storms, but nothing had made his heart beat like this. He realized almost immediately that this was not a request. It was a plea. A being who had everything and yet understood nothing was asking him, a single human, to teach her the secret of living. The hall was silent except for the soft hum of machinery and the faint pulse of her energy aura. Guards stood perfectly still, their weapons trained on him, but even they seemed uncertain. They were not used to seeing their queen ask questions like this. Vulnerable questions. Elias took a deep breath and met her glowing eyes. Then I'll show you, he said. I'll show you what it means to be human. How we live, how we feel, how we hope. For the first time in centuries, the queen leaned forward slightly. She regarded him not as a subject or a soldier, but as a guide. And you will teach me? She asked softly, almost afraid of her own words. Yes, Elias replied. If you are ready to see life not as power, but as something worth feeling, then I will teach you everything I can. A silence stretched between them, long and fragile, but it was not empty. It was full of possibilities of laughter, mistakes, warmth, and pain. The kind of moments humans treasured but could never fully explain. The queen nodded slowly. Then begin, she said. Show me what it is to live. And in that quiet, shining hall, an unlikely lesson began. A human would teach an alien queen what it meant to wake each morning, to taste joy, to understand sorrow, and perhaps to feel hope. In that first moment, Elias realized that the galaxy might never be the same again, because life, in its simplest, most human form, was about to touch the heart of a ruler who had known only command, conquest, and control. And somewhere deep inside, he wondered, if she could learn to live, could she also learn to love? The next day, Captain Elias Ward led the alien queen to a small, human-style quarters he had prepared on her ship. It was simple. Warm lights, soft bedding, and the faint aroma of brewed coffee floating in the air. For the queen, who had seen only the cold, sterile halls of her throne rooms and the polished steel of warships, it was bewildering. Elias poured 2 cups of coffee and handed one to her. She stared at the dark liquid, her luminous blue eyes reflecting curiosity and uncertainty. What is this? She asked, her voice careful, almost childlike. Coffee, Elias said, smiling gently. It wakes humans. It helps us start the day. She brought the cup close, hesitated, and sniffed it. The smell was bitter and sharp, unlike anything she had ever experienced. It smells strange, she murmured. That's life, he replied, laughing softly. Strange things that make you feel alive. The queen watched him as he sipped, then tentatively took a small taste herself. Her eyes widened at the sudden heat and bitterness. A soft sound escaped her, a mix of surprise and something like delight. "Interesting," she whispered. They moved to the window where the artificial sky of the ship glowed with a soft sunrise projection. Elias showed her how humans stood in silence for a moment each morning, simply watching the light grow, feeling it touch their faces. "We do this to remind ourselves the day is new, full of possibilities," he said. The Queen tilted her head, studying the simple motion. Her own people had never paused for such things. They rose at orders, moved at commands, acted with purpose, but never for the small moments that made life feel real. Then Elias did something unexpected. He pulled out a small device and played an old human song, a soft melody with a voice that carried warmth and sorrow together. The Queen froze as the sound washed over her. She had never heard music like this, not in her palace, not in her training rooms, not even during the celebrations of conquest. "Music. It stirs the air around the heart," she said slowly, almost tasting the words. "Yes," Elias said, smiling. "It touches feelings we cannot see or explain. Humans use it to celebrate, to mourn, and sometimes just to remember they are alive." The Queen closed her eyes, and for the first time, the weight of her crown and her centuries of rule felt distant. She was no longer the conqueror of worlds. She was a being learning, trying, discovering. She let herself breathe deeply, letting the song fill the empty spaces inside her. Elias watched her carefully. He could see her fascination growing, the wonder slowly replacing the cold calculation he had seen for so long. "Humans do strange things," he said, "because we need to feel them. The little things make life worth living." She opened her eyes and looked at him, unguarded and vulnerable. "Do humans always feel so deeply?" she asked. "Not always," he said. "Sometimes we hurt too much. Sometimes we fail. But that's part of being alive. It's in our pain, our joy, our laughter, our mistakes we find meaning." She nodded, processing the concept with alien precision. Yet there was softness now in her gaze. For the first time, the Queen allowed herself to imagine a life without control, a life of curiosity and wonder. Elias handed her the coffee again. "Drink slowly, savor it. Life is made of moments like this." She raised the cup, hesitated, and finally smiled. A small, uncertain, human-like smile that made Elias's chest tighten. "Perhaps life is worth learning," she whispered. In that simple morning, the first lesson had begun. A human was teaching an alien queen about the fragile, beautiful, unquantifiable essence of living. And in teaching her, Elias felt something shift, not just in her, but in himself. He realized that sometimes the bravest act was not fighting enemies or exploring stars, but showing someone the heart of life. And as the light of the artificial sunrise bathed them, Elias could see it clearly. This queen, who had ruled 1,000 worlds, was about to learn the most human thing of all, how to wake each day and feel, truly feel, alive. The next lesson began with a walk. Elias led the alien queen to a section of her ship she rarely visited, the artificial gardens. They were vast, filled with alien flora from dozens of worlds, each plant glowing with soft bioluminescence. The air was fragrant, rich with life, and for the first time the queen moved slowly, taking in the beauty rather than commanding it. "This is curious," she murmured. Her long fingers brushed against a shimmering leaf that seemed to hum under her touch. "We grow plants for oxygen, for efficiency, for survival. Never for feeling," Elias smiled. "Humans do it differently. We stop to notice life, to breathe it, to touch it, to let it remind us that we exist." She tilted her head, watching him kneel beside a patch of blue flowers that glowed faintly under the artificial sunlight. Elias picked one gently and held it between his fingers. On Earth, people touch things, even tiny plants, just to connect with the world, to feel the moment, to feel alive. The queen knelt beside him, awkwardly adjusting her weight. Her movements were delicate, almost alien, yet in them was a curiosity that Elias had not expected to see. She leaned closer, her glowing eyes scanning the small petals. "Fragile," she whispered. "Such small, weak beings. Yet they seem so strong." "They are strong," Elias said softly. "Not because of weapons, not because of armies, but because they feel. They love, they hope, they endure. Every small moment, every struggle, it builds them." For a long while they moved silently through the gardens. The queen watched Elias touch the leaves, smell the blooms, and even laugh softly at the gentle sway of alien vines. She tried to mimic him, awkwardly holding a glowing flower and breathing in its scent. Her lips parted in wonder. "It touches something I did not know existed," she said quietly. "Beauty," Elias said. "Humans call it beauty. It reminds us that life is more than duty or survival." The queen's expression softened. For centuries she had led with strategy, power, and fear. She had conquered planets, broken alliances, and commanded armies without hesitation. But here, in these glowing gardens, she felt something foreign, something that made her chest ache in a way that no victory ever had. She stopped by a small fountain, where water shimmered like liquid light. Elias cupped his hands and let the water flow through them. "We touch water not because we need it, but because it reminds us of life itself," he explained. "The flow, the sound? It comforts us, calms us." She mirrored his actions, letting her fingers dip into the water. The sensation was alien and soft, yet it stirred something within her. A memory she could not name, a feeling she had never allowed herself to feel. Vulnerability, perhaps, or peace. After a while, Elias led her to a patch of ground covered with tiny glowing flowers. "Humans sometimes just lie down in the grass," he said. "They look at the sky. They breathe. They exist for a while without orders or battles, just being." The queen sat beside him, hesitant, then allowed herself to lean back, her gaze following the artificial sun above. The glow lit her features softly, showing a side of her Elias had never imagined. The queen not of conquest but of wonder. "I see it now," she whispered. "I understand why humans hold these moments so dearly. It is life. Not survival, not duty, life," Elias nodded. "Exactly. It's fragile, fleeting, and imperfect. And that's why it's beautiful." For the first time, the alien queen smiled fully, not the cold curve of command, but a human-like smile, hesitant yet real. And in that smile, Elias saw a universe of possibility, a ruler learning to feel, to live, to be more than power and fear. As they sat together in the gardens of light, the queen realized that the universe she had conquered was not empty. It was waiting for her to learn what she had never known. That life in its smallest and quietest moments could be the greatest conquest of all. For a few days, the lessons continued in quiet wonder. The alien queen walked beside Elias Ward, learning how humans ate, laughed, and touched the world around them. The ship felt different now. Warships did not usually smell of coffee, music, and flowers. But peace, fragile as it was, could not last forever. Rumors traveled fast, faster than light ships could carry them. Members of the High Council whispered about the human influence on their sovereign. "The human corrupts her," they hissed. "She will betray the empire." Messages arrived at her throne room with sharp tones, warnings of rebellion. Some ships even loitered near the borders, waiting for orders that might never come. The queen ignored the warnings at first. She had always ruled with iron clarity. She had faced wars, plagues, rebellions, and still stood untouched. She told herself the lessons were harmless, even necessary. Humans were weak, fragile, emotional creatures. What harm could a single one do? But one night the danger became very real. Elias was sleeping in his quarters when alarms echoed through the ship. Blaster fire erupted nearby. Shadows moved against the walls. Someone had come for him. An assassin, silent, deadly, precise. Elias jumped from his bed, pulling his sidearm, heart pounding, but he was human. He knew his skills were nothing compared to trained Zirani killers. A soft, terrifying sound filled the room, the doors sliding open with the hiss of force fields disengaging. Before he could react fully, a figure moved to strike. Time slowed, and then suddenly the blade stopped by hands stronger than any human could summon. The queen had arrived. Her aura flared, energy radiating from her in waves that made the assassin stumble. In a blur of motion, she disarmed him, holding him at her mercy. Her eyes glowed, fierce and unyielding. For a moment, she looked like the conqueror of 1,000 worlds again, the ruler who crushed everything in her path. But then, she turned her gaze to Elias. Her eyes softened, and the faintest tremble ran through her. "Why?" he asked, chest heaving. "You could have let them kill me, because..." She hesitated, and for the first time, the words were not orders or demands, but something raw, almost human. "Because you showed me how to feel. I cannot return to the emptiness I ruled before." The assassin lay on the floor restrained and terrified. The queen's glowing hands hovered near him ready to strike, yet she did not. She looked at Elias again, and something unspoken passed between them. Trust, fear, hope, and something even deeper, perhaps the faint stirrings of affection. Elias felt a strange warmth in his chest. He realized suddenly that the queen's question, "Can you show me how humans live?" had become more than curiosity. It was a lifeline, a plea for connection, and an admission of loneliness that spanned centuries. The ship was quiet once more. Outside, the stars moved like silent witnesses to what had just occurred. The queen returned to her chambers, her hands still trembling slightly. She was no longer the untouchable ruler in that moment. She was someone learning, someone human in a way she had never imagined. Elias cleaned his weapon, heart still racing, yet a sense of calm settled over him. He understood that the greatest battles were not always fought with guns and ships. Sometimes the battles were fought in trust, in understanding, and in letting someone teach you how to feel again. That night, as the artificial sun of the ship's garden rose softly, the queen looked out at the stars and whispered to herself, "Life, it is more than conquest. It is more than fear. It is feeling, and it is fleeting. I want to learn it." Elias, standing nearby, did not hear her words, yet he knew she had begun to change. And deep down he understood that the universe itself had shifted slightly, because of one human heart teaching one alien queen the fragile, beautiful, and terrifying truth about life. The memory of fire, as he would later call it, was not just a warning or a near-death moment. It was the spark that would ignite everything to come. After the memory of fire, the lessons became deeper, more intimate. Elias Ward understood that showing the alien queen the small routines of life had opened her curiosity. But now he needed to teach her the essence of being human: emotions, art, and laughter. He began with art. In a quiet chamber filled with human paintings and drawings, he showed her images of people smiling, crying, embracing. He spoke softly as he pointed to colors on canvases. Humans express what words cannot hold: joy, sorrow, hope, love. It all comes alive in color and shape. The queen studied the paintings in silence. She tilted her head, trying to decipher the emotions that splashed across the canvases. Some faces were joyful, others full of pain. Some were raw, chaotic, yet strangely beautiful. They are weak," she said at first. "Humans are fragile creatures. How can they carry such—" She hesitated. "Intense feelings? They are strong because of it," Elias replied. "The heart that feels deeply is the heart that survives. Pain teaches, joy inspires, laughter heals." The queen's glowing eyes softened as she examined a painting of a child laughing in the rain. Something flickered inside her, unfamiliar but not unwelcome. A small part of her longed to understand it, to feel it herself. Elias handed her a brush. "Try it," he said. "Do not think of rules or perfection. Just let yourself create. Let yourself feel." Her long, delicate fingers trembled as she touched the canvas. At first the strokes were stiff, uncertain, but gradually color began to flow. A bright blue sky, a small golden figure, tiny flickers of warmth in every line. When she stepped back, her eyes widened. The painting was simple, yet it radiated life and hope. "That is, human fire," Elias whispered. "The fire we carry inside that shines even in darkness." The queen stared at her creation, then at him. "I understand," she said softly. "I see it now. Humans. They are fragile, but they burn. Always they burn." Then came laughter. Elias taught her how humans laughed. Not the polite, measured sound of diplomacy, but the unguarded, sometimes clumsy, irrepressible laughter of someone who finds joy in a moment. At first, the queen tried to imitate it. The sound was strange, echoing oddly in her throat. But soon it became genuine, flowing freely. Her laughter mingled with his, a melody of two beings from different worlds sharing the simplest human truth. "I never knew sound could feel like this," she admitted, her voice shaking slightly. "It lifts something inside." "Yes," Elias said. "That is the heart of living. To feel, to create, to laugh. It is what makes every day worth waking for." Over time, the queen began to notice details she had never cared for before. The scent of flowers, the warmth of sunlight, the softness of fabric against her skin. Every sensation was new and precious. And with each moment she learned that being alive was not about command, fleets, or conquest. It was about connection. vulnerability and presence. One evening, as the artificial sun set in the Garden of Light, she turned to Elias. "I am beginning to see," she said quietly. "I am beginning to feel, and it is terrifying, but also beautiful." He smiled gently, understanding. "That is what it means to be human," he replied. "To feel fully, to burn brightly, even knowing pain may follow. That is the human fire." For the first time in her long, commanding life, the queen removed her crown and set it aside. She did not need it now. She was learning a different kind of power, the power to live, to feel, to hope. And beside her, standing quietly, guiding and protecting, Elias understood that the galaxy itself might change, one human heart at a time, and in that quiet chamber, filled with paint, laughter, and the warmth of fragile human fire, the alien queen began the transformation that would ripple across worlds, teaching not fear, but the most dangerous and beautiful thing of all, life itself. The peace the alien queen had begun to taste was fragile, more delicate than any flower in the gardens of light. The High Council had grown restless. Messages arrived with cold precision, warning that her fascination with human ways was weakening her rule. "She is being corrupted," they said. "The human spreads weakness. Order must be restored." For the first time in centuries, the queen faced opposition not from enemies in war, but from the very people she had trusted to advise and protect her. Their whispers reached her chambers, sharp and poisonous, filled with fear of change. They could not understand why she laughed, why she paused to touch a leaf, why she spent hours learning something as meaningless to them as human art. Elias noticed the strain in her shoulders. The glow of her aura flickered uneasily. He had hoped their lessons would bring enlightenment, but now he saw the cost. The council's displeasure was not idle. They were mobilizing fleets at the borders, ready to act if their orders were ignored. "You can still leave," he said quietly one evening, as they walked through the gardens under the soft light of artificial stars. "I'll stay. I don't belong here. You can rule without me." The queen shook her head, her long fingers brushing against a flower that glowed faintly in her touch. "No," she said, voice steady but trembling beneath the surface. "You once said humans stand for what they believe in. I believe in this, in learning, in living, in seeing beyond fear and control. I cannot turn away now." Elias stopped, looking at her with a mix of awe and worry. "Believing in humanity?" he asked softly. "No," she whispered, eyes glimmering with an alien light that was almost human. "Believing in life." The council sent their fleet anyway. Ships encircled the flagship, their weapons humming and glowing, ready to strike. The throne room trembled under the energy of anticipation, and in the command chamber, the queen stood beside Elias as the walls shook from the council's bombardment. "Step aside," one of the council leaders demanded through the comms. "Do not make this harder than it must be. Return the human and resume your duty as ruler." The queen's gaze did not waver. She reached for Elias's hand. "We face this together," she said, her voice calm yet powerful, carrying the quiet certainty of someone who had learned what courage truly meant. The first salvo struck, shaking the ship violently. Alarms blared, crew members screamed and scrambled for safety, yet she stood firm, her aura flaring brighter than ever. She did not fight for conquest or survival. She fought for the fragile, fleeting, beautiful idea Elias had shown her. Life itself. Elias raised his blaster, but he did not fire. She was not asking him to fight enemies this time. She was showing him, showing herself, the strength that came from living, from standing for what mattered. Minutes passed, or hours. Time became meaningless in the chaos. The queen's hands glowed, a living light of defiance. She redirected energy shields, repelled attacks, and moved through the corridors with calm precision. Her people watched, unsure, terrified, yet unable to look away. And slowly, something remarkable happened. A shift in loyalty, a spark of understanding, a question that flickered in the minds of soldiers and advisors alike. Maybe life, maybe joy, maybe feeling was worth more than obedience. When the final bombardment passed, the queen and Elias stood in the command chamber, bruised but unbroken. The council had not fallen, but their certainty had cracked. For the first time, they questioned whether a ruler who chose life over fear might lead differently, better, stronger than one who ruled only by power. The queen turned to Elias, her chest rising and falling steadily. "I am beginning to understand," she said softly. Life is not safe. Life is not easy, but it is worth everything. Elias squeezed her hand, feeling the same fierce pride he felt the first time she smiled at him in the Gardens of Light. "You're right," he said. "It is worth everything." And in that moment, amid chaos, rebellion, and the uncertain eyes of her people, the alien queen truly began to live. Years passed, and the galaxy slowly began to notice a change in the Jirani Empire. Where once fear had ruled, there was now curiosity. Where once commands had echoed in silence, laughter and music now filled corridors. And at the heart of it all was the alien queen, forever transformed by the lessons of a single human, Captain Elias Ward. The queen stood on the balcony of her flagship, overlooking a city that glowed softly with artificial lights designed to mimic the warmth of sunlight. Children played in the streets below, their laughter echoing in the clean air. Soldiers walked with smiles, pausing to greet each other and strangers alike. The Empire was no longer a place of cold efficiency. It was alive. She thought of Elias often, remembering his quiet words, his gentle guidance, the way he had taught her to feel, to burn with life instead of ruling with fear. He had not been a soldier, a diplomat, or a strategist. He had been human, and that had been enough to change everything. In her private chamber, she placed a small statue on her desk, a human figure holding a cup of coffee, standing in the sunrise, smiling with the fragile certainty of life. It was a reminder of the lessons that had begun years ago, the lessons of laughter, music, art, love, and hope. The High Council had resisted at first. Some still whispered, fearful of the changes, of the warmth that seemed to infect the Empire. But the Queen did not rule them with an iron fist anymore. She led by example, showing that strength was not in domination but in courage and compassion, in the ability to feel and live fully. Slowly her people followed. One evening she walked through the Gardens of Light, now blooming with human and alien flora alike. The glow of flowers bathed her in soft light. She stopped at the fountain, cupped her hands and let the water slip through her fingers. She felt the life pulsing around her, the fragile, fleeting beauty of every moment, and for the first time she felt truly at peace. A group of children approached, giggling and pointing at her unfamiliar features. She knelt, letting them touch her hands and ask questions. She laughed softly, the sound natural and warm. "Life is strange," she told them, "but it is beautiful if you take the time to see it." Her advisors came quietly, standing at a respectful distance. They watched her interact with her people, realizing that the empire they had thought would crumble under a human's influence had grown stronger. Not stronger because of fleets or weapons, but stronger because its ruler had learned to live and to inspire life in others. In that moment, the Queen understood something vital. Humanity was not perfect. It was fragile, flawed, and brief. But it burned. And sometimes all it took was a single human heart to remind an empire what it meant to truly live. She whispered Elias's words to herself, letting them sink in. Life is strange, but it wakes you up. And she knew finally that she had been awake all along. Not to command, not to conquer, but to feel, to love, and to let life flow through her as freely as the wind through the gardens. Legends began to spread across the galaxy. The alien queen who had ruled with wisdom and power, yet chose life, art, laughter, and hope over fear and domination. She became a symbol not of conquest but of transformation. And though Elias was gone, lost in a battle long before the Empire had fully embraced change, his memory remained alive in every smile, every song, every small act of compassion that filled her world. As the artificial sun rose again in the Gardens of Light, she closed her eyes and felt the warmth on her face. She inhaled deeply, letting the scents of flowers, the laughter of children, and the soft hum of life wash over her. She had learned what it truly meant to live. The alien queen, once feared across the stars, now stood as proof that even in the coldest hearts, the smallest human spark could ignite hope, courage, and life. Humanity had touched her, changed her, and through her, the galaxy had learned what it meant to feel, to hope, and to live fully. And somewhere, beyond the stars, the fire of humanity, its laughter, its art, its fragile courage burned on, proving that life in all its imperfection and beauty could inspire even the mightiest of rulers. The Queen smiled, a soft human smile, and whispered to the universe, "Life is worth everything."